I spent my savings to put my boyfriend through medical school. At his graduation party, in front of his family, he announced he was leaving me, saying, "I'm a doctor now. I need a wife who isn't a waitress." I just smiled and toasted to his success. This morning, the medical board called him about his application, and my phone hasn't stopped ringing. You guys, I am still trying to wrap my head around what happened last night. My world just kind of exploded, and I'm sitting here in the wreckage trying to figure out which way is up. My boyfriend of 6 years, Alex, dumped me. That's not even the worst part. He did it at his medical school graduation party, which I planned and paid for, in front of his entire family and all of his new fancy friends. After he basically called me trash, I just smiled, raised my glass, and said to Alex, I think he wanted me to fall apart, to scream or cry, but I was just empty. I walked out of there without another word. That was last night. This morning, my phone started buzzing at 7 a.m., and it literally has not stopped. I've got missed calls from his mom, his dad, his sister, and about a dozen from Alex himself using a blocked number. I guess the state medical board finally got around to reviewing his application, and the perfect life he built for himself is already starting to look like a pile of rubble. And I guess they all think I'm the one who lit the match. Let me give you some backstory so this all makes sense. I've been with Alex for 6 years, since we were both 21. When we met, I was a waitress at a nice steakhouse downtown, saving up every dollar I could because I had this dream of opening my own little bistro one day. He was a pre-med student full of big talk about saving the world. He was charming and smart, and I fell for him hard. When he got into a top medical school, the tuition was insane. His parents are well off, but Alex has this massive pride thing and insisted on doing it on his own. I was so proud of him for that. I told him we were a team, that we'd figure it out together. I just didn't realize that we actually meant me. For the next 6 years, my life stopped being my own. It was all about him. I worked my way up to floor manager at the restaurant, but I never gave up my weekend shifts because the tips were too good to pass up. Every single extra dollar I made went straight into an account for him. I called it the Dr. Alex Fund. That paid for his tuition when his student loans didn't cover it all. It paid for his ridiculously expensive textbooks that probably cost more than their weight in gold. It paid for his rent on the apartment we shared, an apartment we only moved to so he could be closer to campus, which meant I now had an hour-long bus ride to work every morning because, of course, I had to sell my car. The $500 a month I was spending on my car payment was, in his words, better invested in our future. I remember one time, about 3 years ago, he needed a new laptop because his old one was too slow to run some program for his classes. It was $2,000. I didn't have it. I had just paid for his lab fees for the semester. So, I sold a gold necklace my grandmother had left me. It was the only really nice piece of jewelry I owned. I told him my mom had given me the money as a gift. I couldn't stand to see the look on his face if he knew I'd sold a piece of my own history to buy him a computer. He just said, "Oh, that's great, honey," and was more excited about the laptop than anything else. That should have been a sign. The sacrifices just kept piling up. I put off getting a cavity filled for 6 months because the money for the dentist had to go toward the fee for one of his certification exams. I remember my tooth aching every night while I was quizzing him on pharmacology, and I would just smile and pretend everything was fine. My life became a series of spreadsheets and budgets, figuring out how many extra shifts I needed to work to cover his next expense. My dream of a bistro got smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared completely. It was all for him. He was going to be a doctor, and he'd take care of me. He promised, just a little longer, Clara, he'd say, kissing my forehead after I'd just gotten home from a 14-hour shift. When I'm a doctor, you'll never have to smell like steak again, unless you want to eat one. The change in him was gradual, like the tide going out. You don't notice it until you look up and realize the entire beach is different. The further he got in his program, the more he started looking down on my life. My job, which was paying for his entire existence, suddenly became embarrassing to him. We went to a dinner once with a couple of his classmates. They were all from these rich doctor families. One of them, a girl named Tiffany, who looked like she'd never worked a day in her life, asked me what I did. Before I could even open my mouth, Alex jumped in with this breezy laugh and said, "Claire's in the hospitality industry. She's a real people person." He patted my hand like I was a golden retriever. It was the first time I felt like he was ashamed of me. It got worse. He started making little comments about my clothes, my friends. Like best friend Sarah, who is also a waitress, came over one night, and after she left, Alex said, "You know, I don't think Sarah is really on your level anymore, Clara. Her ambitions are a little limited, don't you think?" I just stared at him. Sarah was the one who had driven me to the emergency room when I cut my hand at work because Alex was too busy studying to be bothered. Final, undeniable proof that the man I loved was gone came about 8 months ago. He was in his last year, and the pressure was insane. He was working on a huge research paper that was a massive part of his final grade. He was always locked in his office, telling me not to bother him. One night, I was cleaning up and I went to grab his laundry from his office. His laptop was open, and I saw his email. I know, I shouldn't have snooped, but the subject line just jumped out at me. It said, "Final exam materials confirmed." My hands were shaking, but I clicked on it. It was an email from that rich classmate of his, Mark. Attached was a PDF file. I opened it. It was the full final exam for his most important class with the complete answer key. They had gotten it from a resident who worked at the hospital. They had bought the test. My heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. I scrolled through the email chain, and they were talking about splitting the cost, wiring money to this resident's account. It wasn't just Mark. It was a whole group of them, and Alex was organizing it. I felt like I was going to be sick. All those nights I stayed up quizzing him. All the pride I felt when he'd get a top grade. It was all a lie. He wasn't a genius. He was just a rich kid with no morals. A cheater. A few weeks later, I was deep cleaning our apartment and I found a USB drive hidden in a shoebox in the back of his closet. I don't know why, but I had a bad feeling. I plugged it into my laptop. It was full of medical articles and research papers from all over the world, and it also had the final version of his big research paper. I started comparing them. It was a copy and paste job.